Okay, we're going live in 3, 2, 1. Hi everyone, it's Kevin McConney here from Enterprise Lab, and welcome to episode 2 of the League of Disruptors Show. Today I have got the phenomenal Jamie Smart on, so make sure you're preparing your questions today because we're talking about clarity and transformation. For those of you who don't know about the League of Disruptors, it's a new show started by myself, really where I put a spotlight on the genius of experts, business owners and entrepreneurs that are out there that are making a difference so you can step into your own geniuses. So without further ado, let's get into introducing Jamie here. What a guy, #1 selling author, renowned speaker. He's a clarity king, as I call him, and transformation wizard. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. I also want to announce that apart from the number of books he's already written, he's just recently released results, which we'll have a little chat about as well. So make sure you're airing your questions on the live feed, which I'll go on to. And like with anything, we have a technicality. Just bear with me. Apologies. That's what happens when you're on live. So without further ado, welcome. Good evening, Jamie. How are you?
Yeah, really well, thanks. Thank you for having me here.
No, it's an absolute pleasure, and thank you for coming online as well. So, Jamie, I think I've only just recently got a chance to connect with you. I've heard about you, and I've seen one or two of your books that you've done on from now. But could you tell a bit of our audiences about your background, who you are, and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, sure. Well, so I grew up in Canada, which is where I got this accent. And then I moved to the UK when I was 20 years old, and I've been here ever since. So for the first decade that I was living here, I was working first as a computer programmer, then getting into project management and program management. And I started getting involved in organizational change. Mm-hmm. So and once I was in the domain of organizational change, company integrations and purchases of companies and that sort of thing, I became very fascinated with what was it that made the difference between change happening in an organization and change not happening. And what I saw again and again was that it was down to the minds of the people involved in the change, and down to and a lot of that was down to communication. So I ended up working for a consultancy, and they sent me on an NLP course. This is way back in 1998. So I got now here's the interesting thing. I had lots of friends who were working for themselves, starting their own business and that sort of thing. But I always thought, there's something different about me, which meant I couldn't do it, which meant I thought there was something different about me. And on this first weekend of this course, I had an insight, which was, you can do whatever you put your mind to. It's not necessarily going to work out, but you can have a go. So I quit my job a couple of weeks later, and I started, basically for the next couple of years, I contracted while I was learning my new career, which was what I was fascinated with was, how does the mind work? How do you communicate that? How do you teach people? How do you speak to people? All that sort of thing. So then I started an NLP business, grew that called Salad, grew that between 2003 and 2012 when I sold it. But here's the interesting thing. I was I read The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss, and I was like, that's what's missing. I need to be going on mini retirements. That's what I need. So I got my business running on autopilot. This is in like 2008. Went on my first mini retirement and wasn't happy. I was feeling, off track and off base and dissatisfied and distracted and bothered. And according to what I believed of the rules of my industry, I should be smashing it. I should be over the moon. I should be levitating with white light pouring out of my eyes. And instead I was down in the dumps. So I was like, okay, back to the drawing board. And this was the real turning point. I hired a coach, transformational coach, to work with me. And very, very quickly, I discovered that I'd been looking in the wrong place for fulfillment, security, adventure, satisfaction, all those things, and that I'd been in the grip of a misunderstanding. And that misunderstanding had me running on what I call the hidden hamster wheel. Now, it's not that there aren't all kinds of amazing, cool things to do. But if you've got a misunderstanding of how your mind works and how your life works, you're going to struggle. And I was struggling. And so that insight, the first big insight I had, this is back in like 2009, was everything you've been looking for outside of you, actually you're going to find that inside of you. So that was like a game changer for me. And that changed how I work with clients. It changed how I organized myself. And the irony is, you hear something like that, and you might think, Guy, if I believed that, I'd just sit in my apartment eating donuts all day. But actually, the opposite has happened. My success has gone to a whole new level. I ended up writing books that have become bestsellers. My business has grown exponentially. So actually, when you clear up a misunderstanding of how your mind works and of how your experience works, you actually get more power, more energy, more leverage, more impact. So that's where my first book, Clarity, came from. That's where my second book, The Little Book of Clarity, came from. And that's where this new book, Results, has come from. It's like, well, okay, let's put our money where our mouth is. If it really is a misunderstanding that slows people down, once you see through that misunderstanding, how can you use it to create the results that really matter to you in your life?
Yeah, I think that's phenomenal. I mean, it's just going back a little bit into your history about you got to that kind of crossroad and pathway where you just felt that you weren't. I've been there myself. I was great academically, went up to university, and then I kind of got into this environment where I had the situation whereby I wanted to become a car designer, and as a result of that, I took aeronautical engineering as a formal part of my academic career. I went into the second lecture, and I asked the most simplest question at that moment in time for me, and this is about this is talking about clarity as well in that respect. My naiveness was based on the fact that the question was to the professor, have you ever designed a car? And to that the professor responded no, at which point I just packed up what books I have, left, and I kind of walked straight out of this auditorium, only to be brought back in a couple of days later back into the university and saying, what's going on? And I said, well, how is it that a person who's never designed a car going to teach me to design a car? I mean, that's my point of clarity. Why I kind of reference back to you is there was a juncture within your life where you got to a stage and said, what is it that other people can teach me that I can't either teach myself, experience myself, or move forward from myself with? And this thing about mindset and clarity, I mean, that's a lot of the work that I do. I help people change their perceptions, that changes their behaviors, that changes their attitudes, that changes their actions. But I think what I love about what you're talking about here is that sometimes it's just simple things, the way we perceive simple things on the fact that this is what I think I'm doing and this is what I think I'm going to achieve. And actually the universe isn't set out like that for you, and making that difference in the clarity of understanding what the problem was and understanding what that misunderstanding is and knowing how to sort of start to overcome that, you can really simplify your life but push yourself forward. But I kind of want to just touch back on this whole thing about pockets of retirement. When you read Tim's book and stuff, did you when you went through this whole process of retiring, what did it make you feel like? I'm surely the first few weeks and stuff must have felt great because your business is an autopilot, you're making money, and you've got all of a sudden all this time in your hands. So what changed there?
Yeah, well, it was for the first week there was kind of euphoria and excitement. It was like amazing. And it didn't last. And I had booked like a 3 months off, basically 3 months it was a ski holiday. So I was going to be like, this will be amazing. I'm going to be an amazing skier. It was like in my mind, it was going to be incredible.
Yeah.
And when reality hit, see, what I didn't realize was at that time was that it doesn't matter where you are or what you're doing, you're always going to be living in the feeling of thought in your own experience. You're going to be living in your own thinking. So if it, and we know, there are lots of examples of this. We've all, gone somewhere that it wasn't that great, but we had a great time because the vibe was amazing. We brought an amazing vibe with us. And we've all been somewhere where it was an incredible location or an incredible event or an incredible situation, but you just weren't feeling it. Well, that always comes from the inside. That's why, 10 people go to see a movie and they have 10 different experiences. The experience isn't coming from the movie. It's coming from inside of you. Now, I got a really simple metaphor for this. If you think of a child's teddy bear, so little kid, 2 years old, has a teddy bear. Now, the little kid genuinely believes that their feelings of security and peace and comfort come from that teddy bear. But you and me know that teddy bear is full of stuffing. 100% of those feelings of security and comfort and peace are coming from within the psychology of the child. Same as if you go on holiday and you forget the teddy bear and the child's freaking out, they feel that they believe their feelings of loss and disappointment and insecurity are coming from the lack of a teddy bear, but that's all coming from their own psychology as well. So we get this. This is common sense. We understand it. But how different does it look when we're talking about the adult teddy bears of our business or our bank account or our employees or our colleagues or our clients or our cash flow or the future or the past or whatever? So I'll give you an example. I write about this in my new book, Results, actually. I was working with this entrepreneur, very, very successful guy. This guy had bought a company, doubled it in turnover and profit in 2 years, like just was proper exponential growth. And he came to me because when he originally spoke to me, he wanted me to work with his employees. He said, they're not being proactive enough. I have to tell them the same thing 10 times. It's not great. As I was listening to him, this guy was working like 18-hour days, 7 days a week, and I could hear how much stress he was in. So I said to him, look, I think it makes sense for me to work with you first. Then we can see what makes sense with the team. So he agreed to it. So we ended up doing an intensive together. First morning in the intensive, I said, explain to me, make me a list of where your stress and anxiety and pressure is coming from. So he makes this list with like 30 things on it. It's coming from the bank, and it's coming from the competition, and it's coming from the legislation, and it's coming from the future, and it's coming from the employees, and it's coming from the family. And the 30 things on the list that were causing his stress. And I said, okay, would you like to hear my theory about where your stress is coming from? He says, yeah, sure. And he said, I wrote up on the board next to it, I said, 100% of your feeling of stress is coming from thought in the moment. It's coming from your own psychology. 0% of it is coming from anything on that list. It's all coming from your psychology. So he's like, whoa, I'm going to have to go away and think about that. So he goes off for lunch, comes back after lunch, picks up a red pen, puts an X through his list. He goes, you're right. It's all coming. I've been doing it to myself. What are we going to do with the rest of the 3 days? So we spent the next 2.5 days looking at how, you see, you know what it's like, man. You walk into a room and someone's there who's totally stressed out. You pick up on it. Yeah. Just like if you walk into a room and someone's there and they're in a good vibe and they're relaxed and they're comfortable, you pick up on that. So what had been happening to him, his employees would walk in to ask him a question. Even before they open their mouth, they pick up on the fact that he's all like, what do they want now? They get stressed. Well, no one does their best listening when they're stressed out. So he gets back to work after the 3 days together. He said it was like his employees had been away on a training course while he'd been away, because all of a sudden they're good listeners, they're proactive, they're responsive, they're taking responsibility for themselves, they're thoughtful. He still has to give them guidance and stuff, but it's like his team changed while he was away. They didn't really change. They just responded differently when they saw how he was. And here's the interesting thing. This was like 3 years ago. I did this piece of work with him. We did a follow-up interview the other day, and it continued to change, because you got to understand, he had been living in a profound misunderstanding of where his experience is coming from, a misunderstanding that we get. I got asked by a newspaper today to write tips for their readers about how to deal with the stresses that Christmas causes. And it's like, Christmas doesn't cause stress. It can't. It's coming from your own psychology. So but this is a profound, widespread misunderstanding, and this is what all my work is about. Just like 200 years ago, they used to believe that infection was caused by bad smells and the weather and long journeys and vigorous exercise and all manner of things. The one thing that wasn't on their list was bacteria. But the one thing that caused infection was bacteria. The one thing that was causing it wasn't on their list. Well, it was the same with my client's list. He had 30 things on his list. The one thing that wasn't on his list was the one thing that was causing it. And we're all up against that. So this is a game changer, man.
Absolutely. I mean, that's absolutely incredible stuff. And just before I go on, guys, for those of you that are watching this live, you have your opportunity to ask Jamie any question you want to. So all you've got to do is get that question up onto our field and just onto the timeline. I'll take those questions on and I'll get them over to Jamie, and Jamie will answer them today before we go off the live. I just want to come back to you, Jamie. This is phenomenal stuff, because what you're talking about is 99.9% of the time people actually create these lists of stresses and worries and fears and aspiration and inspiration. And actually, the key factor of everything that affects those or has a contribution towards those are the one things that aren't actually on the list, and a lot of it's to do with the person themselves inside.
I'm going further than that. I'm saying 100%. Like, literally, there is no such thing as a stressful circumstance. 100% of the experience of stress is coming from thought in the moment. 0 is coming from anything other than thought. 0% of it is coming from your partner, your clients, your bank account, the presentation you need to give next week. What I'm suggesting is 100% of that is a trick of the mind. You see through that trick of the mind, and it's a game changer. You don't see through that trick of the mind, and you're going to be at the mercy of it. So this is hard line.
No, this is brilliant, because I think a lot of the audiences that I have that will probably be watching here are a mixture of people that are considering starting up a business or have recently started, and some of them are actually in that kind of push now where they've established themselves, where they're trying to grow. And we take those words, stresses and stuff like this, and again, this whole thing of the challenge, the competition, the everything surrounds them, and the fact that there is pressure to move forward. Why is it, do you feel, that people surround themselves in fear, especially when they've or why is it that when they have no other option, that's when they're the best version of themselves? What is it about the mind, do you believe, with the experience that you've had, that changes people's attitudes and perceptions and actions when you're in that kind of position of, I'm in an affordable job, I've got a nice job, I can leave and start up a business tomorrow, a lifestyle one, or like I was, a victim of the recession, where I had no other choice but to either join the queue of a 2,000 to 1 ratio for jobs or go off and become self-employed. What do you think triggers that kind of change in mindset and behavior?
Now, which change in mindset are you talking about? Because I heard you mention a bunch of different things. What's the thing you're asking about, Ketan?
So what you have here is we've got situations, and I have circumstances where I have people who who want to change, they want to become entrepreneurs, they want to be successful, they want everything, but there is something instinctively holding them back. Now, I'm going to caption that as fear. Whereas you see, when you're in an environment where you've got nothing to lose, your back is against the wall, all of a sudden, this kind of fear dissipates. And I just want to know, I mean, there is the obvious part of it, but there's just something more deeper rooted in this whole purpose of what happens. Does it mean that you become more clear or, I would love to learn your thoughts. Yeah.
Here's how it looks to me. It's the most natural thing in the world that we sometimes believe our feelings are coming from something other than thought, and particularly when it comes to future unknowns. So I work with a lot of people who they'll say something like, "Oh, I would start that new business if only I knew how to do it," or "I would start that new business if only I was guaranteed it was going to work." Well, guess what? If you start a burger franchise, then there is a step-by-step instruction of how to do it handed down from head office. But anything else you're going to create, if you're going to create it, you're going to start it from scratch, which is going to mean you have to find out as you go along. And there are no guarantees. There are no guarantees. Now, that's fine. As human beings, we do great in those kind of situations. But the issue is, people think about the future and they get scared. They get scared of failing, or they get scared of being criticized by others. And they believe that their feelings in the present, those feelings of fear, uncertainty, discomfort, are letting them know about the future. Well, that's not possible. Those feelings are letting them know about what's going on in their psychology in this moment. Your feelings don't know about the future. So, here's a really simple metaphor for it. Apparently, public speaking is the number one fear among people in the Western world. So, if someone's got a talk coming up in 3 weeks, and they think about it, or a best man speech or whatever, and they think about it and they get, cold sweats and that sort of thing, those feelings aren't coming from the future. That would require a time machine, and we don't have time. 100% of that experience of future anxiety is coming from their own psychology in the moment. It's a virtual reality machine, perceptual machine that we have, but it genuinely seems like it's coming from the future. It really seems like it, but it's not. It's not real. That's a trick of the mind. Now, here's the thing. You'll hear people say, well, I'd do it if I felt more confident. It's like, but if that's a trick of the mind, why would you even want to include that misinformation in your decision-making process? Like, I've been doing this stuff for a long time, right? I still get scared. I still get freaked out and that sort of thing. But you don't have to feel confident or feel certain or feel good in order to take action. You just need to take action. In fact, I heard someone say the other day, I really loved it. When you do courage and bravery, which I just think of as doing the right thing even though you're scared. When you do that, there is literally no way to fake courage. If you actually do it, then it's courage, whether you fake it or not. It's the real thing. So it takes a certain amount of just willingness to move in the direction that, like to come face to face with it and go, look, your feelings can't be letting you know about future events. That's just not real. Your feelings are letting you know about this moment, what's going on in your own psychology. And if you're willing to look right at that and take action, even though you may be feeling a bit freaked out or uncomfortable or scared or whatever, you'll discover see, we've evolved over millions of years. We're built for reality. We do great in reality. Where we don't do so good is in made-up la-la lands, where we're pretending that we can feel future events and that sort of thing. We're not built for that world. We're built for the world of real stuff, the here and the now. We're built for that world. And that answers, yes, how come when people go for it and they get going, they do so much better? Because we're built for here and now. We're built for action. We're built for doing shit. We're not built for pretending that our feelings are letting us know about imaginary futures. We're not built for that. We don't thrive in that. Our bodies don't thrive in that. I'll give you a perfect example of this. So I've started doing boxing lessons lately. So my boxing class was at 12:30 today. And I'm sit all morning. I'm like, man, I don't want to go to boxing. It's going to be hard. I'm going to feel sick. I'm going to all that stuff. But I absolutely know. My feelings don't know anything about boxing class. They don't know anything about that class. They know about my own thinking in this moment. So I ignore them. I show up to boxing class, and guess what? I loved it. I really enjoyed it. Oh, this is true whether it's boxing class or whether it's going on TV or whether it's asking for that deal. Like, I can't tell you how many proposals I've made where I was sure it was going to go badly and it went well, or when I was sure it was going to get turned down or I was going to get laughed out of the office and it went well. So just realizing that we're always living in the feeling of thought in this moment, even when it looks like it's coming from out there. That's incredibly liberating.
It is, absolutely. So let's be direct about this. You know, we're talking about almost becoming prisoners to our own thoughts and our feelings. You know, the feelings drive our thoughts drive our feelings, or our feelings drive our thoughts.
I'm saying they're one thing, actually.
Yeah.
Thinking, feeling, it's like a guitar string. If you pluck the guitar string, the sound and the vibration, they're two sides of the same coin.
Right. So with your expertise, I mean, obviously through clarity, through transformation, with your new book results, what is it? What advice do you give to the listeners and the viewers out there? You know, for those that are becoming prisoners of their thoughts and their feelings, because a lot of, you gave the example of that entrepreneur who you worked with, where you actually got them to exhaust the list of all the things. What are your practical tips that you would give to people out there so they can release themselves of their thoughts and their feelings?
Yeah, well, now this is a great question, because if you imagine for a second, what I'm saying is that this understanding is to our psychology like the discovery of germs was to medicine. So if you had two doctors, imagine it's like 1850 and you've got two doctors and you're talking to them about, guess what, there's these things called germs and they cause infection. And the docs are going like, what tips do you have? Well, my number one tip would be learn about germs. Learn about germs. You'll learn it. See, here's the thing. You and me, we learned about germs when we were little kids. I've got to tell you a story. I was telling this to one of my clients in Singapore. So she works with banks and large financial institutions. And she goes, oh, my daughter had that. So her daughter is like 4 years old, 5 years old, goes to school one day. And the teacher says, today we're going to learn about germs. And she takes two of the little kids, and you know that glitter that little girls like? Yeah. She puts glitter all over their hands. And she goes, let's check in at the end of the day and see where the glitter is. So where's the glitter at the end of the day? Everywhere. Yes. Every kid, every surface, all the walls. And the teacher goes, that's what germs are like, except germs are invisible. Well, she taught those little kids to hallucinate germs. Someone did that for us. And because we got it, we've been learning about germs ever since. And now you have such a good understanding of germs that you use it 100 times a day without even thinking about it. Whether you're going to eat that sandwich or whether you're going to clean that surface or whether you're going to wash your hands. You learned about it. It's called implication-based learning. You learned about the implications of germs and you use it automatically without even thinking about it. Same with gravity. You've used gravity 10,000 times this week. You've used your embodied understanding of gravity 10,000 times without even thinking about it. Just to stand up, sit down, pick something up, whatever. You're using it automatically without even thinking about it. Well, if we had two doctors and they were saying, what are your tips? We could tell them, well, wash your hands before performing surgery, wipe down surfaces. We could give them some tips, but no tip would be anywhere near as valuable as what that teacher gave those kids, which is an embodied understanding of germs. Well, with what I'm talking about, I'm suggesting that this understanding is to psychology what germs was to medicine. And my number one tip would be learn about it. This is why I wrote Clarity. This is why I've written my new book, Results. So I had someone picked up the book. It's only been out a few days. Someone picked up the book. I'm going to read you what they wrote. This was someone who'd been very much that person we were talking about, who's wanting to do something, but they're scared of being visible and scared of making a mistake and that sort of thing. She ended up writing a blog post. She'd wanted to write a blog post for ages, but had never done it because she'd been scared of being visible. And she said, at the end of the post, she said, I'm only 100, this was about my book results. She said, I'm only 100 pages in, and I've come further today than I have in over 13 years. See, we live in a world where everyone will tell us that it works outside in. And I'm telling you right now, it does not work that way ever. It's 100% inside out. You start to see that for yourself, it's going to completely change the game.
Wow. I mean, this is just, it's incredible. So clarity, very much about that kind of, understanding it, living into it. It's that whole visual. I love the metaphor within that story of them, how the little girl had glitter all over it, so it visualizes what it is, so you can learn. So I guess one of the base things you're telling would be, should be, and could be entrepreneurs that are trying to engage or enter this market of whether they're going self-employed or trying to create their own lifestyle business, or even wanting to produce something which in the future could be a mega corporation which employs hundreds of millions of people.
Sure.
The first thing they've really got to do is learn about it. The more education they have, the more competence that they have within this. I suppose that balances their confidence in that ability, which I guess harmonizes the thoughts and the feeling.
Well, yeah. Like if you think about it, if there's a simple misunderstanding that's tripping lots of people up, if you're not caught up in that misunderstanding, you've got a huge advantage. Because I got to tell you, man, everyone is getting tripped up by this thing. And the people who aren't, they're racing ahead. Now, here's the other cool thing. If you look at anyone who's totally flying, whether it's Richard Branson or Elon Musk or anyone like that, you look at the areas where they're kicking ass, those areas, they're not caught up in this misunderstanding. So, for instance, you were saying about fear and that sort of thing. You look at Richard Branson's autobiography, he's like, no, business is about fun. It's about enjoying yourself. It's about trying things out. It's about seeing what's possible. Well, when it comes to business, he's not caught up in this misunderstanding. He intuitively gets it. You look at anyone who's a natural in any domain, and in that domain, they will be very close to reality. They won't have a bunch of misunderstanding. You look at anyone who's a naturally good public speaker, they got nothing on their mind. They're just rocking it. They're showing up and rocking it. Anywhere where, and it's the same for each one of us, anywhere where we just flow, we aren't caught up in misunderstanding. Anywhere where we struggle, we are caught up in misunderstanding. So it just makes sense to clear that up.
So within that, is it fair to say that people, we talk about this a lot when I do training as well, that people should focus, stay in their lane, be built on the things that they're most naturally good at, as opposed to comparison of trying to be a jack of all. I mean, I say this for the reason why that, for example, the performance engagement, coaching industries, life coaching, these things are all exploding over the last 4 or 5 years. We've got an abundance of professionals who believe that they can go in and help other people. Yet they tend to scatter themselves too thinly in the fact that they provide so many different varying services. And I guess what I'm trying to say here is when you pick people like Branson and Musk, they actually stay in their lanes. They've kind of conceptualized and do the things, in a very simple visualized format. You said, Branson says business is fun, whereas Musk has this whole thing, why can't we? He has this whole thing about why can't we do things? This kind of question put together. So for those that are out there, that, as I say, that would be, should be, and could be entrepreneurs, and those that are actually moving forward and trying to scale up and grow their businesses, what's the fundamental piece of advice that you'd be giving them rather than a tip, in the sense of, should they really go through this journey of recognizing who they are as people and what they're essentially good at before they even start a business?
Well, I don't know. It looks to me like starting a business, going and doing your own thing rather than doing what everyone's been maybe telling you should do, or what's been comfortable or whatever. I would say follow your passion, follow what you're enthusiastic about. I mean, I'm good at stuff now that I had to learn to be good at because I would have gone out of business if I didn't. So I don't think I'm not a big fan of waiting. I'd say with any business, you want to be able to, you got an idea? Great, test it. See if someone will buy it off you. See if someone will pay you for it. That's the best test. I wouldn't, I was talking to a guy the other day and he's like, I'm like, so what are you up to? He's like, well, I've spent the last 2 years designing this training course that I want to sell into the corporate world. I'm like, how long have you spent on it? He's like, 2 years, spending all my spare time designing it. I'm like, have you run it past any potential clients yet? He's like, no, not yet. That's the next step. I'm like, dude, that's the first step. I don't even want to develop something until someone's given me, commitment to they'll pay me for it, because I want to. So yeah, I don't have the sense that you should wait till you know what you're good at or whatever. That enthusiasm, that passion, that inspiration that gives you a sense of direction, that has its own reason for existing. What I'd suggest is this misunderstanding I'm talking about, the outside-in misunderstanding, it's worth learning about that. This is what Results is about, because that's the one thing that's going to trip you up, and it's the thing that if you get clarity on it, it's going to open the door for you to make progress faster. Because, a lot of the people, the businesses that I coach, the individuals that I coach, the vast majority of their challenges, difficulties, and problems are coming from the friction caused by being in a misunderstanding about where their experience is coming from and who they really are. Like literally not understanding their own psychology.
Amazing. So let's talk about, we're on for another sort of 5 or 6 minutes, and please, guys, if you have any questions, do get them through. It's an amazing opportunity to have someone like Jamie on with all of this expertise and information. So get your questions in if you get that chance. If not, post them through to us a bit later, and I'll send them on to Jamie, and Jamie will respond to it. But I want to come to your book, Results. I mean, it's pure and simple. It's just called Results. And in fact, I mean, you are probably, you are talking that, walking that talk, should I say that, with the whole thunderclap that you developed, and you wanted to push this out. I think this went beyond your expectation. I mean, when I went on to subscribe and register for the thunderclap, I think you were at 290% of what you needed to be at. And my, is that a result? So tell us more about the book. What can people uncover and within the book, what is it that you've really designed that book to be sort of written for, and who really?
Yeah, well, so the full title, it's called Results, Think Less, Achieve More, because it looks to me like the biggest challenge people are up against is they're overthinking what they're doing. And again, the areas where we don't have so much on our mind, we just flow, we just go for it. And so it's to get people more in touch with that sense of flow and go for it and take action and get results. And so it's organized into 3 different parts. The first part is about your personal transformation, becoming the you that can create the results you want to create. So we look at the whole domain of this idea that you're built for reality, that you're optimized for results, that the only thing that ever gets in the way is this misunderstanding, and how you can clear it up. And then we look at things like purpose and authentic desire. We look at goals, and we look at the whole domain of momentum and productivity. There's so many misunderstandings that people get caught up in around productivity, and it's just how can you really ignite that productivity so that you can get things done. So that's the first part of the book. Second part of the book is all about impact, because at the end of the day, whatever your business, whether you're running a big business, or whether you're doing a startup, or whether you've just got your own one-to-one practice or whatever, your impact is what people pay you for. They don't really care about what you do or your credentials or that sort of thing. What they care about is the difference you can make to them. And so the second part of the book is all about that impact. How do you get in touch with the impact, the value that you have to give to your clients, and how do you convey that? And then the third part of the book is about your commercial transformation. It's about leverage. You know, we live at a time when there's never been more leverage available. It's absolutely incredible. You know, all the tools like the thunderclap you mentioned is just one example. We had this idea to use a thunderclap to launch the book. We got to a social reach of over 1 million people in like 3 days. It was off the hook. Well, those sort of tools in the past, those sort of things, they weren't even available, and that kind of reach was only available to the people who own the biggest companies or the biggest media empires or governments. Now they're available to you. And the third part of the book is all about how do you take this understanding and your innate capacity for insight and realization and agility and action, and how do you use it to take advantage of the opportunities that are coming our way these days. So that's what the book's about in a nutshell.
Stunning. So look, I need to know, do you have a link to where people can purchase the book? Where is it available?
Yeah. Well, actually,
is it available in bookstores and stuff like this?
It's available in bookstores. It's also on Amazon, and we've got a page set up because we really want to send people to Amazon to get the book and see if we can get an Amazon #1.
Sure.
So if you head over to jamiesmart.com/get results, what we're doing is we're giving away a whole bunch of free products. So basically, if you buy copies of the book, we're going to give you bonus audios and other cool stuff. Or even if you just buy one copy of the book, we'll still give you access to the Clarity Results community and a masterclass I'm doing in a few days. So it's at jamiesmart.com/get results. And we're just getting great feedback from people already on the book. So it's a real game changer.
So outside of the book and the masterclass, what's next? What's next, Jamie? I mean, how can people connect with you outside of the book? Are you going to be running sort of programs? Are you doing a line of keynotes? What's next for Jamie Smart?
Well, there's a couple of things, as well as going to jamiesmart.com/get results. If people go to Instant Results, they can download the first 2 chapters of the book, and then they'll get on our mailing list, and there are a variety of things coming up. So we've got something I'm doing that's starting in about a week called Project Glasswing, which is very much working with transformation professionals. So this is coaches, trainers, therapists, consultants who want to grow their practice exponentially. So I've also got a thing on Facebook called the Exponential Practice Professional Group, which is all about that. Then we're going to be doing results workshops starting in January so that anyone can get a better understanding of this and start getting the results that matter to them in their own life. And then we've got other things like our consulting business and Clarity Coach training and a variety of other things. But you can find out about it all at jamiesmart.com.
Fantastic. So we have some people that have been giving some comments in. I've had Louis Barnett, who's a good friend of mine as well. I'm not sure if you know who Louis is, Jamie. When he was about 14, he produced a chocolate bar that went into Waitrose, and he went into cocoa farming and stuff like this. He's doing a lot of work in Mexico.
Nice work, Louis.
He's a good old friend that used to work with me, Jonathan Lee. He's really given some props here. Shimoni Gilani's just went and bought your book. So
thanks.
We have got a lot of people running through. I've had Michael Heyman online as well, having a look at this. So look, it's been great to have you on here today. We'll put the links on live. We'll be sending the pre-recorded videos back out into the network. If there's one message that you want to leave the audiences before we sign off, what would that be, Jamie?
Yeah, here's my message. You're capable of far more than you think you are, because you are far more than you think you are. That's my message. So go for it.
Amazing, beautiful, beautiful. So on behalf of Enterprise Lab and the League of Disruptors, Jamie, thank you very much for being on today with our expert. We're also going to be featuring an interview with Jamie in the magazine. For those of you who haven't subscribed to it, the Enterprise Lab magazine is a very straightforward, simple, but yet effective platform where you, the subscriber, gets to drive the content. Using your subscription, you can broadcast your business, you can send your expert authority documents and stories and all sorts of articles, and advertise. We have over 14,000 subscribers around the world. The message from Jamie has been quite clear. You've got to get out there and do certain things. The links are in here. I'm going to put up Jamie's links very, very shortly to make sure you're getting that book. Make sure you're signing up for those masterclasses. And if you are in that personal development, transformational industry, just watch out for those classes that are coming through from Jamie. I mean, this is going to be unbelievable. But other than that, Jamie, thank you very much. And
thank you.
And all the best.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.